I've been playing at this place, the 55 Bar in New York City, for a bunch of years now. A couple times a week, regular kind of gig. Very loose. It's not advertised generally. It's just kind of very, you know, at the moment kind of gig. And so we figured it would be a kind of a cool place to do an instructional video, and it would have a very live feeling, which, as you'll be able to see, it does. There's no question about it. There are people like walking around, ordering drinks. You know, it's done with a handheld camera. It's not like fancy lighting or anything. But I think the vibe, you know, it was definitely worth it because the vibe is very live, very loose, and it was fun. Definitely fun to do. I'd like to introduce Satoshi Inoue, who's a very good friend and who's going to help me out with this video. Fantastic player also.
Hi Mike. Would you talk about your musical background?
Sure. We got a lot of ground to cover, so I want to make it kind of quick, but basically I've been very fortunate to play with some amazing players. I guess the first kind of very well-known gig that I got was with Blood, Sweat and Tears. And then I got a chance to play with Billy Cobham not too long after that, and then Miles Davis, which was an amazing experience.
Yeah, I saw the band. Yeah, it's great.
Really fun, really amazing. And then Michael Brecker, the Brecker Brothers, and Steps Ahead. Whole bunch of great players. So I've been really lucky, really fortunate to play with some terrific players, and I learned a lot from all of them.
Can you go back
I guess I might have left out Jaco Pastorius,
right.
which I shouldn't have left him out. And it was a great experience.
Would you talk about how you started the guitar playing?
Well, I guess the first, I started when I was about 12. I kind of dug the instrument, you know. I was playing a little bit of piano before then, but really was kind of just gravitated towards guitars. Took a couple lessons, and really it felt right. And the more I practiced, the more I got into it.
Back then you were listening rock and roll or what?
I was listening to like Jimi Hendrix and the Cream and a lot of blues players also, and I was playing a lot along with the records a lot, you know, and just by ear, and that was possible to do with that kind of music. For me, it was basically in one key. When I tried to learn more about jazz, that got a little bit more difficult for me because the keys changed a lot, and the melodies seem more intricate. That does not make it a better kind of music at all. I love a lot of different kinds of music, you know, and I definitely have a place in my heart for a lot of different kinds of music. But I certainly love jazz too. So I had to study a little bit more.
That's why you went to Berkeley?
I went to Berkeley, and I was studying some privately, and I continued to study.
I see. So, and this never ends, huh?
Never ends, and it gets the more you know, the less you know. I think, you know, basically, it's certainly it's the case with me. It's a huge field, you know.
I know you practice a lot.
Yeah, I've been practicing a lot over the years, and probably it's slowed down a little bit, but I do practice a lot, and I feel like it's very important for me to have kind of as regular a schedule practicing as possible. A couple hours in the morning, a couple hours in the afternoon, if I can do that much.
Cool.
Every day, you know.
Hey, let's check the music. You know, some of the stuff you videotape at the 55.
Okay, well this is a blues tune in B-flat blues, and I'm playing with Ari Honig and Ned Mann. Ari Honig, drummer, and Ned Mann, bass player. Two guys that I've been playing with a bunch, and they're fantastic players. And check it out, and then we'll talk about it.
All right. Man, you sounded great, Mike.
Thank you.
I hear all kinds of influence of all kinds of music. Rock, jazz, Jimi Hendrix, bebop. And you start with octave playing, huh?
Yeah, I'm definitely influenced by a whole bunch of different people, but certainly Wes Montgomery was one of my all-time favorites, and I do some attempt at octaves.
Would you show me that?
I guess my way to do it is kind of keeping my fingers kind of in this position. I guess the best way to describe it would be, that's one way of doing it. This is another. I do it this way, the first way. So basically it's always in this position. That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I was doing that with a pick. You can also do that with your thumb. It's a little bit warmer sound. That's the way Wes used to do it. Something like that,
yeah.
you know.
And after octave playing, I remember we went to single note playing. It's higher. And you play something like...
There's some symmetrical stuff in there which I'm trying to disguise and make it not seem too obvious. But I like sometimes some of those ideas, as long as they're, like I say, kind of not too obvious, not too literal, but just kind of they sneak in and out of in the context. But a lot of that is horn lines.
Yeah.
I've checked out tenor players a lot and some piano players also. I think that lick that you just played.
Yeah.
I play it more in position, I think, in this case. Oh. That, it's kind of a diminished lick of just minor 6 going down in minor thirds.
Right.
So it's minor 6 going down to minor thirds. I think that's what that was. But basically, it's I think I got that it's a Mike Brecker lick or something like that. Somebody that I was listening to who wasn't a guitar player. And I'm more into trying to get, of course I listen to a lot of guitar players, but I lately, over a bunch of years actually, I've been listening to more piano players and more tenor players, trumpet players, other instruments.
Okay, and also you play something like...
That's just a
Tritone.
Tritone, yeah, kind of triads. I like using triads sometimes. There's such a strong sound that no matter where you take them, they work almost, because the sound of a triad is so strong.
Right.
Of a 3-note triad. It's, you know what I mean? I was just doing a triad, kind of playing around triads and whole steps in that just now. And I think it kind of, you hear the triad so strongly you could use it over anything almost.
Okay.
But in this case I was thinking B7, I'm sorry, B flat 7, B flat D, F, and then E triad, but thinking those over B flat 7, I think. So you'd get a B flat, D, and F, and then sharp 11, and a flat 7, and a flat 9. E, A flat, and B over B flat, and so it's an interesting kind of way of using triads.
All right. You play something. You put your pinky on the high string, and you kind of move the lower voices.
Exactly.
Oh yeah.
Kind of. I mean, over a B flat 7, for instance, I might pick a certain tension, like a tension 9, which is C, and play a part of the chord of a B flat 7 underneath it. Say the A flat here, the D here, the G here. So it's a flat 7, third, 13, and a 9 on top, and kind of more like a piano player.
Right.
I actually heard Jim Hall do this though on a great record that he did with Ron Carter called "Alone Together."
Yeah.
And he did something like that. My version is slightly different. I took that kind of idea and try to make it my own a little bit. So I guess I do it kind of where I trill the. When I change here, this is E flat 7, by the way. That's kind of an E flat, certain voicing of an E flat 7. So you can change the voicings around underneath it, and I just kind of do that sort of thing. A little bit of a trill there sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. How about you? Sometimes hear superimposed change, something like that, on your playing. It sounds a little bit out from the changes.
Yeah, I like to try to do that, and that's a lot of that horn line. When I listen to a lot of tenor players or piano players, they do that a lot.
Like since this is a B flat 7 blues,
I might first of all think of it as instead of just B flat 7, I might think of it as F minor.
F minor 7.
To F minor 7 to a B flat kind of. That's kind of F. It's kind of a 2/5, putting a 2 chord in front of the B flat. So already you're adding a change, and then maybe instead of maybe I'll take that kind of 2/5 up a half step and play that over B flat, and resolve it to B flat. So I'm playing F sharp minor 7 to B7 to B flat.
I see. Okay, that's great.
Yeah, some ideas like that. I mean, it's a lot more. It can get a lot more involved than that. The guy I study with, Charlie Banakis, a great piano player and great teacher, calls that chord on chord. When you take a chord and you put another chord on top of it, or another progression on top of that.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask you about Charlie Banakis later.
Sure,
but,
sure.
I heard some very quick fingering, something like double time
In the solo?
in the solo. What was that? Would you play slowly
That was
for me?
a bunch of mistakes really fast. But there was one thing I think you were talking about before. Once again, I was thinking it was over a B flat, I believe, and it was an F minor 7 kind of idea. So F minor 7, F minor major 7, F minor 7, resolved to some kind of B flat kind of thing. But I was doing it real. And I basically, my picking technique has always just been up and down. It's kind of
You pick all the notes.
alternate picking all the notes, but trying to make them sound like some are ghosted. Like the way we talk. We don't talk very completely even with, you know what I mean, like robots, but certain syllables are softer and
Certain things are accented.
Exactly, and you don't even think about it, but there's a rolling dynamic when you're talking, and I try to get the same thing happening, kind of more of a conversational or kind of vocal kind of approach when in my playing, both talking and sometimes a singing kind of style too. I'm into that. You know.
At the end of your solo, where I thought you were gonna quit your solo, you step on the distortion and you went to another level.
Yeah, I mean, I like doing that sometimes, especially in a blues, you know. even though if it starts out kind of more as a jazz blues, and then it gets into a different, it definitely gets into a different thing a lot of times with a little bit of distortion there. As long as the rhythm section kind of follows you, it seems like it works.
Yeah. Would you mind showing some bending, string bending lick?
Yeah, because I'm definitely doing a lot more of that, aren't I? Well, one thing I was doing is this thing with harmonics, false harmonics, I think they call them, where you play play with the thumb of your finger and the pick kind of in the same at the same level. I don't know if you can see that, but
Ooh, I see.
like that. So you're kind of playing both at the same time, and you get that. It's kind of an expressive, you know, it's kind of fun.
It's blues, huh?
Yeah, yeah, it's a cool thing. Actually, I got that from Roy Buchanan. I used to check him out in Washington, D.C.
Right.
And he used to do a lot of that stuff.
Okay, why don't we check the next tune?
Great.
This is great ballad. It's a beautiful melody, Mike.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow, it's a great contrast to the blues. I think it's so different. You play slow, you taking time and space.
It's a different, I mean, I'm trying to get a different emotion. I guess I always try to play the tune. I think it's real important to if you're improvising, to try to play within the context of the tune and the tempo of the tune and just the emotional feeling of the tune. And obviously this one is a kind of a more thoughtful or a sadder kind of, it's a ballad, you know what I mean?
More singable, I would say, you know.
Oh, thank you.
And how will you come up with this composition?
Well, sometimes when I'm writing, it's different things that like get me going. And sometimes it's a melody at first, sometimes it's the bass line at first, sometimes it's the chords at first. And there are times when I'm listening to some music or reading through some music that I get inspired by maybe one bar or something like that of some other kind of music. And a lot of times I read through like Bach studies. And in this case, I think I was reading through something from Sonatas and Partitas. It's a book for violin that sometimes I work out of. And I can't really play classical stuff, you know. I don't really have that kind of technique on this with the right hand. But I think there was something in the Bach piece that went just that.
Just that.
And that's part of the tune. Then I kind of got so inspired. It just, for some reason, it just hit me. And so I kind of extended the phrase or something, you know what I mean? Etc. And the rest of the tune.
Yeah.
I mean, I wrote that, you know, it just, sometimes one little thing can set you off and you get inspired by the, you know, and put a whole tune together like that.
How you finished this composition?
Just, it kind of took care of itself. I kind of heard the melody and then I worked with it for a couple of days and changed some things, and that's usually what happens. And then there are times when some tunes take months. Right. You know what I mean?
I've noticed this blowing change, which you play great, and the head, the theme is has a little bit different structure.
Yeah, it's a little bit. Sometimes I write changes that I feel like are more a little bit different than the tune. Not necessarily like sometimes when I'm playing over standard jazz tunes, it's just the structure of the tune. You play the melody over the same chord changes, and then you play over that form. And there are a lot of times when I like to, with my own tunes, write a certain thing and then play and change the, for musical reasons, just change the form a little bit.
Would you play this blowing change?
It's just, I guess it's G to C to B minor to E minor. It's basically the same harmony, but the harmonic structure is a little bit more even, so it's a little bit more easy to play over. E minor, and then D minor, and then B flat over D, B flat major 7 over D, then A over F. I'm sorry, F over A to F with F in the bass, and then E minor 7 to A, triad, and then C. That's the whole tune right there. I mean, that's the whole. That's the basic harmony of the tune, but it's simplified, I guess, a little bit in the for the soloing.
Right. It has a nice open chorus.
Yeah, I like that
like
sound.
A folk.
I like that sound. I think guitar obviously lends itself to that a lot.
At last, would you show me the last big E minor chord voicing?
Well, there's
nice.
this.
Yeah.
That's one, or.
Yeah, that's it.
This kind of voicing I got in this guy that I'm about to mention, well, Mick Goodrick, was a teacher I studied with some in Boston. He's an amazing player and a great teacher, and he's got tons of voicings like this, really big voicings, very unusual voicings. His whole concept of coming up with voicings on the guitar are incredible. So I stole a few of them.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that's one of them. That I like to use, and it's
okay. Let's check the next tune.
Okay, great.
That's Cole Porter's I Love You. It's a famous standard, I think. And this time you really build your solo from the bass player Ned Man plays 2/4. Then after you play your signature phrase, that triggered Arihonic.
Yeah.
He had a stick and going to the 4/4.
Kind of. I mean, I think that happens kind of sometimes spontaneously. It's not like a phrase that gets that going. It's just more like one of those things that just happens. I mean, certainly, I like to start off with the drummer sometimes playing brushes,
right?
And so it's got a lot of room to go from there, and then we can really stretch out, and you got tons of room, and have things build, as you say, which is kind of important, I think, in no matter what kind of solo you're taking, whether it be a short solo, long solo, whatever. But certainly, if it's stretching, you want it to go someplace. And otherwise it gets it just sits in the same dynamic kind of place, and it gets a little boring. So I try to develop it, and using different ways of developing, and maybe play slower at first and more melodically at first, and then and kind of build it after that. And maybe more notes later. And the rhythm section goes with it. It has to. I think it's very important to play. If you're someplace else in the rhythm section, especially than the drummer, it's gonna seem not connected, not happening. It really is about I think with this kind of music, as soon as you add a drummer, you really have to have a conversation with the drummer in some ways, and certainly with the bass player too, but most importantly the drummer, I think.
Yeah. How about, do you have any opinion picking a standard like this? You feel benefit of playing a standard?
I like a bunch of different standards, but there's some that I recorded this one on one of those records that I did for Atlantic on a record called Give and Take with Jack DeJohnette and John Patitucci. We played I Love You as a trio, and that was really fun. And so I like the tune. I like playing standards. It's kind of a common ground in the world of jazz,
At the first chorus, you play the melody, but not like lead sheet melody. You kind of play change here and there.
A little bit looser. I tried to get a little bit kind of more of a playing around the melody a little bit, and playing it initially a little bit looser, kind of like more singing. Like you'd sing it, or like sometimes, of course, when I was playing with Miles, the way he would play a melody, and the way you can hear him on record playing a melody is very loose and beautifully phrased, and it's kind of, sometimes he leaves notes out. It's not so obvious, that kind of thing, or he phrases it in a weird place rhythmically.
Right. And at the second chorus, of course, you start improvising, and here I hear some, I would say, diatonic to the chord changes.
Yeah, I was trying to make the chord changes clearly, and using some chord tones also, which is kind of important, especially in the case of a guitar. I mean, with the piano, you have more leeway. You can play the chords on the left hand, and then your solo line in the right hand, and it's fairly defined. Sometimes with guitar, it'll get too free sounding if you don't sometimes really outline the changes in your solo, either by the right scales that correspond to the chords, or by the chord tones, playing around the chord tones.
Would you show some of the?
Well, for instance, with that tune, with I Love You, the first chord is G minor 7 flat 5, and a C7 sharp 9 or C7 flat 9 to F major 7, and the chord tones are G, for a G minor 7 flat 5, they're G, B flat, D flat, and F. C7 is C, E flat, C, E, G, and B flat. This is just 4-part chords. I'm not talking about any additional extensions or tensions. And then F major 7, F, A, C, and E. So, when I was first learning how to play over changes, and hear some of these chords, when I was really first learning, and this is stuff that sometimes I still practice, I just play around the chord tones and try to hear the chord tones, practice the chord tones, because they outline the sound of each chord so well. And then if you practice all the chords together, all the chord tones, you'll hear not only the sound of each chord arpeggiated, but the progression of a standard tune. You know, you can hear these chords right away, that part of the progression immediately. Of course, you do that with a whole tune, you can really hear the tune. So for practicing purposes, chord tones are a really important thing to mess around with and to kind of know where they are all over.
You embellish those notes.
And then sometimes you can embellish them. You can take a chromatic from below each chord tone and embellish that.
And then after gradually your phrasing goes kind of not obviously with change. It's more like going, I would say, phrasing over the bar line or something.
Yeah, it's kind of more out and a little bit freer.
Right.
It gets a little bit freer as a way of building up the tension a little bit. Also, that Ari Honig is great at that too. He doesn't hit one every time. As a great drummer and very loose, great jazz drummer. So he sometimes and Ned Mann too. They phrase over the bar line, so we don't know where we are half the time. But no, you have to know exactly where you are actually to play that free and not to turn the beat around. So you really have to know the tune and you have to know each other's playing and stuff.
Would you show me some long lines, 8-note line, if you don't mind?
I'll try. I guess if we played that tune, 1, 2, that kind of thing. So that's kind of certainly not a lot of space in that. The idea is to really kind of fill it up.
It's like a snake
moving. And hopefully it's not too, it's still swinging. I mean, that's kind of the idea, is to still make it try to kind of flow without being too obvious, but and making the changes at the same time, but not in a really obvious way, hopefully.
Towards the end of the chorus, you kind of played something like
kind of
going
symmetrical.
out, going out.
That was kind of a pattern that I kind of used over the 2 5s. Something like that. With not really thinking about the changes, but just kind of a line, and then you think about the target note that you're kind of going
target
for.
Note. That's a keyword.
Yeah, and the rhythm, it should probably be on a strong beat, so that you end, and with the drummer, he'll hopefully be following you, which Ari was, and then he hit it at a strong beat, and I hit it, so hopefully like the right note. I think I hit the right note.
You raise attention by playing some kind of pattern and going up, or in this case, going up, and you gotta resolve somewhere.
You gotta resolve someplace, otherwise it'll sound like.
And hopefully with drummer.
Hopefully with the drummer, and hopefully on a right note. And
you did it.
And I got lucky that time. It worked out. So that was a tune called Tipitinas, and it's on my last CD on Atlantic Records. CD's called Play, and that was with a different band for this one cut. This was with Richie Morales and Lincoln Goins is playing bass, Richie's playing drums, and Bob Franceschini's playing tenor saxophone. And it was fun. We definitely had a good time. We played together a lot, actually, that particular band. On the CD, Dennis Chambers is the drummer on the CD, but Richie plays beautifully, and they all play great, you know. So, and it's a fun tune. It's just kind of a funk tune with a little bit of a New Orleans feel to it, and it was kind of the name anyway was kind of inspired by this place that I played at. That's a club in New Orleans called Tipitinas. I played there with Jocko years ago.
I see. Yeah, it's kind of funky.
Yeah.
And I've noticed that this is something about technique. Your right hand technique, especially, I mean, you would use for other kind of tune, but it's obvious you're doing your right hand constantly moving, you know, with rhythm.
For the rhythm part.
Yeah, and some notes are picked and some
I
notes
guess some are
there.
ghosted. I do that kind of unconsciously. I guess I've just been doing it for years, but I like that kind of feel. And then so it's got that.
And your left hand is muted. Not sometimes you press.
It's just and then when you hear the chord, I'm pressing hard. That kind of groove. It's just my rhythm playing compared to some guitar players that I know is not so great, you know. But I love the feel for it. I mean, there's some guys that they're so in that world of rhythm guitar. There's tons of them to check out. Anybody that ever played with James Brown or plays with Maceo Parker or people like that, you could check out for days because it's a different kind of world.
Can I ask you about a little bit about soloing you did on that?
A lot of that was just, you know, a little bit of bebop, kind of heavy metal bebop.
Heavy metal bebop.
But some of that was, and some just rock licks. I mean, rock from that world. Which I think sometimes if you don't, you know, I like the fact that I've got those kind of influences, some of those rock influences, really from rock players, and I don't want to, just because I play a lot of jazz, compartmentalize. I mean, sometimes I'll do more string bending than maybe some other jazz players, and it's just because that's part of my style, my influences, and it's an honest enough thing that happens.
Would you mind showing me some? You play some high position.
Rockin' stuff. It's kind of hard in this context because it needs to be louder, but. It's kind of just a rock lick, you know, that you could recognize. I mean, that really is, if you get too sophisticated with that stuff, that can be cool, but you get away from that, the real sound and the real feeling of that. I mean, rock has to be kind of what it is, you know. If you get think about it too much and try to make it sound too different, it's becomes something else, I think. Right. And but I like combining that with some bebop lines,
Yeah.
which seems like
Yeah,
that
I
works,
know
too.
that. One thing amazed me is you play some slick bebop line and straight go to the kind of rock and roll stuff, but your grip is same kind of.
Kind of wrong
Because
anyway. With that thumb
I mean,
over.
a jazz guitarist, when they play a bebop line, this might be, hiding the thumb might be technically
correct, yeah. But
correct,
I've never
but-
been right with that stuff.
Well,
anyway. But it's interesting, you mentioned that, because really quickly I wanted to mention that technique is something that usually you find your whatever works. It's good to learn the rules, but then sometimes you just got to see what works for you. And also people's styles are defined by as much as by what they can't do as what they can do. For instance, Jim Hall he's not a chops player per se. He doesn't play a lot of notes, but the notes then his style is so, the notes that he picks are create all the tension and the excitement, and it's incredible the way he's used what he can't do, which is play fast. He's used it to kind of shape another kind of a style, much more melodic and amazing. That's kind of it's a beautiful, amazingly beautiful thing, and like some of the greatest playing in the world, But there are examples like that all the time, and I think technique and all that stuff kind of finds a way of working out. Whatever take what you have and you make the best of it. That kind of thing. And also the most important thing I think is developing your own voice. So you have your own voice, whatever that may be, and also playing from the heart. Because then it doesn't matter if you play a lot of notes, a few notes, the blues, rock, jazz, it doesn't matter. If you're playing from the heart, that's the main thing
that's
about
a
music.
key word.
Of course,
Yeah.
I think so.
Let's talk about equipment you're using. What's your guitar?
This is a Yamaha signature model, and it was modeled after this guitar that I used for years, this Telecaster that's not really a Telecaster, it's kind of a custom guitar. I used it some on the video and on the live stuff from the 55, and some with this also. This sounds very similar to that, and it's a very, very good guitar.
How about amplifier?
The amps that I use, I generally use the stereo sound, 2 amplifiers. I like the kind of the fat sound and the air that it gets. And I use this 412 JBL, these 2 cabinets, and that's with this pierced top, which they don't make anymore, but I really like it. It's easy to take around also. And this is a real old Yamaha. You can tell it's really old because there's a whole piece falling out of it. But it works really well, and it's really a warm sound. And it's solid state, so if I go on the road, which is quite a bit, and I have to travel with this stuff, I can take it without the fear of any tubes breaking, because there are no tubes used. But it's got still a very warm sound, I think. And this SPX I use basically for a kind of a chorus sound. It's actually pitch change patch that I use on it, but it produces kind of a chorus sound, which I like.
Then
Some
you
pedals.
Have a whole
I got
bunch of,
all Boss pedals. These are just kind of spares, but I use this digital delay, Boss digital delay, for kind of a. You can hear that. It kind of gives it some air. Sometimes I use this for an effect. That kind of stuff. And then this for like a little.
That's an octave
That's
lower?
it, octave.
Two octaves or?
Just one. I don't know how it's set right now, but it does a little bit of both. But it's pretty homegrown by today's standards. It's pretty purist. But I like it. I like the way pedals sound.
This is a distortion, of course.
Yes, exactly.
Orange box.
Right, and I use that a bunch on that.
Oh, I forgot to ask you that. What string are you wearing on?
I use Fender strings, and actually an 11 up top, and then the rest are from a Fender 10 inch or 10 whatever.
Okay, so you changed on the first string.
Exactly, so it's a little
one.
fatter, yeah. So it's 11, then 13, 15, 26, 32, 38. That's what it is. So I've been using that for years, so it seems like it works.
Mike, do you have any routine exercise, daily exercise for guitar?
Yeah, pretty regular stuff. I mean, for me, it was really important to practice regularly because all this stuff came kind of slow to me, actually, and especially learning how to play jazz and all the stuff that you needed to know. But I try to practice regularly, no matter how frustrating sometimes this whole thing can be. It's well worth it, you know, when you start getting a glimpse of being able to kind of get some fluency with the language of the music, you know. So sometimes I practice, you know, some scale kind of exercises, like some interval kind of stuff, or sometimes some chord voicings, different stuff that I already mentioned, some stuff from Mick Goodrick, or some, and a lot of transcribing. I definitely do a lot of transcribing. And different instruments and different players, so as not to copy one guy, but just to kind of get the phrasing from different players, different great players. Here's an example of it's kind of a mess, but an example of a McCoy Tyner transcription. He's a great piano player, and this book is kind of full of different transcriptions. And here's a John Coltrane transcription.
You
also.
even put the finger number, huh?
Yeah, I try to do that, to try to get some of the phrasing, and not so much to memorize it literally, but just to kind of absorb it in my playing. And it's a kind of a cool way to go, I think. It certainly is interesting to me, anyway.
Yes. Would you show me some scale practice, Mike?
Yeah, I was thinking about that earlier, actually, of something that Mick Goodrick showed me, which was kind of interesting, and certainly has really been useful for me, which is instead of practicing, for instance, a C major scale in position, instead of practicing it in position, play it on every string. I'm kind of doing this faster than you should probably practice it. There's no real fingering involved. But to practice it maybe this fast, thinking every note and kind of keeping the root of the chord, which in this case is C, keep that in mind, and just play the notes of the C major scale up every string. You can do this with any scale, of course. I'm just doing it with a C major scale for purposes of example. But it kind of puts the guitar in a different perspective, not so much this way as learning it this way also, which is kind of cool.
That's increase your fingerboard dexterity, I would say.
Absolutely, and your knowledge of, and your ear. It does a whole bunch of things for you.
I heard, by the way, you've been studying with Charlie Banakas.
Yes.
Would you talk about that?
I'm still studying with him, and he's taught me so much amazing stuff. I mean, like, I couldn't even begin to think of half of the stuff, or even close to half of the stuff.
If you would pick one example.
I could think of just one thing that I was thinking about. Maybe instead of, for instance, he did show me to think about this certain thing a different way. Instead of thinking, for instance, if you're playing an F7 chord and you're playing F mixolydian, which is the chord scale, instead of playing that scale, maybe think two triads, like E flat triad and F triad, and practice them by just running them in inversions. Root position, then the E flat first inversion, F first inversion, E flat second inversion, F second inversion. Right, that kind of
I
idea.
see.
And it gives you a kind of a, it's kind of more like a McCoy Tyner kind of feel in a way. If you listen to him at all, amazing piano player. He's got some of that stuff going on.
Well, I think that kind of things amazed me. You already played great, but you seem like you never stop learning.
I mean, I feel like I feel like as I said before, the more you know, the less you know. There's just the music is endless. And the most important thing about it, though, and the technique is endless, and it's great to build your vocabulary in music and to keep going with it, I think. But the most important thing is to play from the heart, I think, because it is a language. It's a language of the heart, for sure. And I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind and to always go for is the emotional part of it, because that's what it's about.